In this video, we're going to be talking about why this lock, the E30 from Eufy, matters. And also why that was a great pun. So if you don't know what Matter is a new home automation language or protocol. And in the past, we've had things like different Wi-Fi systems, Zigbee, Z-Wave, and all these other things. This is kind of a new standard that bridges all of the platforms. So in the past, if you bought something, it was only compatible with HomeKit or only compatible with Amazon or whatever. If it's compatible with Matter, it should pretty much work on everything. So what's really awesome about this is now I can set this up so I can open and close my door with my voice. I can also set up scripts that will, when I unlock this, I can have it turn on lights inside the house so I don't trip over the cat on the way in the door. I can also flip this thing, and depending upon what kind of an alarm system I have, could even arm my alarm. By the way, Eufy, I have one of your alarm systems. Are you going to make it Matter compatible? That'd be really cool. But anyway, first we got to get into actually installing this thing. So what we're going to do is we're going to go open and install it. Now, if you already know how to install a smart lock, I'm going to have a timestamp down in one of these corners, show you where you can skip ahead so I can show you how to set up all the fingerprint stuff and how this thing works. Now, the first step is actually getting the lock installed, not setting it up in the software. Now, we're starting on a door here that already has the deadbolt uninstalled. Now, you actually don't start with this part. You set up with this part. This is the actual plunger for the lock itself. Let's get this installed first. Now, when installing your plunger, it is important to take note that there is a top and a bottom. You want to make sure the top is pointed up. And then screwed in place with the two supplied screws. With this installed, now we can install the keypad itself. Now there's two important things to keep track of here. The first is this wire needs to go through and underneath the lock portion itself. And then this guy right here, this is the thing that's going to turn the actual physical lock, needs to thread straight through that little notch right there. So with it all the way through, you can feed all the bits through, line it all up, make sure this wire here is underneath that, and now we can install the internal plate. And this is the internal plate. The internal plate, you have to feed the wiring through it and then line it up. Now there are two little holes on the inside we're going to line up with, and make sure this little screw portion, the screw hole, is on the downward side. That's what actually attaches to the inside portion of the lock itself. Next is installing the internal portion of the lock. The first thing we need to do is clip our wiring in place right here. And then this is a little bit of a game because you do need to kind of route your wiring around and push it back into the door to get everything to stay. And then this guy right here, you need to rotate so it can seat properly on the outside portion of the lock. With everything in place, it should seat itself. There's little knobs that it seats itself on. And now we have three little screws that secure this portion of the lock to that internal plate. And before we move on to the next step, you do want to make sure that the lock opens and closes. Now this part is a big departure from what I'm used to with the other locks, like the one over here, that I've installed from Eufy. Most of them come with their own proprietary rechargeable battery. These ones run on AA's. Talk about that in the pros and cons at the end of the video. So right now let's get the batteries installed so we can finish with the setup. So now we have the lock installed and the batteries installed. It should be powered up, so now we're going to go into our phone and do the rest of the setup. If you haven't already downloaded the Eufy app, it's time to download that app. It's the Eufy security app, that's the one you want. And you're going to have to set up a password, set up an account, totally free. And now we're going to go in and set up the locks. We're going to scroll down and hit Smart Lock, select our lock, and we're going to install it into our DoItYourselfDad home. That's the system I have set up on here. And we're going to scan the little QR code on the top of the lock. Now we have finished the installation. So now we're going to go and hit the set button. And now it's going to connect to my phone via Bluetooth. And now the lock is going to search for my Wi-Fi because my phone is connected to it via Bluetooth. Now my home Wi-Fi happens to be HAL. If you know why it's HAL, leave me a comment down below. We're going to put in my password, and now we're going to connect to the Wi-Fi. Now this thing connects over 2.4, and there are reasons for that. I know everybody wants 5, but it connects to 2.4, and we're going to talk about that at the end of the video. The one thing that I did notice is this did not give me the option to connect to my home base, which most of my other stuff is connected to. All right, so it's connected to my home network. We're going to go in and select front door, and now it has to go through a calibration process. So we're going to close the door to calibrate the lock. So we're going to tell it to close the door. Now the lock should start a calibration process where it locks and unlocks itself. Now, if you remember on the front of the door lock, there was a place for your thumb, but also a keypad. Now is when you can start setting that up. So we're gonna set up first my code to get into my house. Again, not gonna show you. And now we'll program in my thumbprint. So we're gonna open up the door and start pressing our thumb. And as you do it, you kind of want to work your thumb around. It'll give you some instructions on the phone as well. And now this portion is new to me. It's setting everything up in Matter. And Matter is actually really exciting for me because I do a lot of home automation and I have a bunch of different systems. So hopefully this will help get everything on the same system. Now the issue is I need to actually set up Matter in my house, but that's going to be a whole other video coming up. So now that we've got the lock set up on the front door, you're wondering how I still have one in my hands. And that's because I actually bought two of them. I'm going to be putting one on my front door and one on my garage door. That way both of the doors coming in and out of the house, I will have the exact same lock on and I can set them up with my entire home automation system, which we'll talk about in just a second. Now, some of the other features, just if you're running this straight through the Eufy app and not through everything else, is you can set up multiple accesses. So I have a login for each member of my family. So when my wife uses her thumbprint or her code, it lets me know that she's coming in or going out of the house. My daughter, the same thing. So you can kind of track who's coming and going if that matters to you. I've turned off those alerts, doesn't matter to me. But the other nice thing is you can set up multiple profiles. So I have a profile for my neighbors. When they come over to take care of my cat, I can activate their profile and they can get in and out. And if you didn't want them having your code all the time, mine actually do have my code all the time in case of emergencies. I trust my neighbors. I like my neighbors. You can deactivate it when you come back home from your vacation. You can set up all these little things in the system, which is really kind of cool. The other thing you can do is if you have the entire Eufy ecosystem and you have a Eufy camera or doorbell, you can integrate this with the camera or doorbell. So when somebody rings your doorbell and you're talking to them through your phone, you can actually reach up and unlock your door all in one shot. Now bridging over to the home automation side of things. I'm one of those nerds that is running on Habitat. If you're not familiar with what Habitat is, it's kind of the nerdy version of HomeKit, or the nerdier version of HomeKit. I love it because it gives me a lot of versatility, but it doesn't give me the simplicity of HomeKit sometimes. Now those are compatible, and with this can be compatible on all systems. And like I mentioned before, I already set up a script where when I unlock my front door from the outside, it turns on the light inside so we don't trip over the cat. Now I'm going to be setting up a similar script on this one. This is the one that's going to be going on my garage door coming in and out of the house. So when I'm coming home and I'm coming to the garage, it'll turn on the interior light, but it also knows the difference between whether I've used this side of the lock, the outside, or the inside of the lock. So I'm going to set it up so when I use the inside of the lock, it turns on the light in the garage so I don't trip over all the junk that I've placed on the stairs going into my garage that I forgot about. I also have an automation right now where I have one button at the front of the house, I push it, and it turns off all the lights. It means I'm going away. And I can integrate this into that, which means like when I'm going out of the house, I can hit that button and it'll make sure my garage door is locked as well as turning off all the lights. So there's a lot of cool stuff now you can do that this thing is integrated. You can not just activate it, but you can use it as a switch to activate other things. Now I've actually been tinkering with the home automation thing for a long time, but I haven't really done any videos specifically about home automation. But now with Matter coming out and me diving into that, I'm working on one. So if you have questions about home automation, leave me a comment down below because I'm going to try to integrate all that into the video that I'm working on home automation. But now let's get into kind of the pros and cons of these locks because not everything's perfect and I want to make sure that everybody that is watching can make a really informed decision whether or not this lock is the right lock for you. Now I've already kind of nerded out on all the pros because I'm really excited about the Matter thing. Another thing to note is this is one of the more affordable, it's a pretty basic lock. It's just got a keypad and a thumbprint. They have other locks that have things like doorbells and cameras and all this other stuff that are twice as much money. So this is more affordable on the realm of the Eufy locks. Part of the way I think they kept it affordable was they're not using the big rechargeable lithium battery in it, they're using those AA's. We'll talk about that in a second. Something I haven't really mentioned too much before is the reaction speed. It's thumb scanning. I've had other locks where when you put it on there, it has to think for a second or two before it unlocks. This one is immediate. By the time you've touched it and taken your thumb off, it's already recognized and it's already starting the unlock process. I also haven't had any issues with this one not reading my thumb under normal conditions. Now, I have noticed sometimes if I'm sweaty or wet that sometimes I have to dry my thumb off. I'm either doing yard work, or the other day I was coming home on the motorcycle and I was wearing gloves and it was hot. So I did have to kind of dry my thumb off a little bit. I know it's gross, but it's life. I had to dry my thumb off a little bit to get it to read properly, but it worked fine. Now, if it doesn't read your thumbprint at all, you can still use the key code, and it does have a traditional key. All the Eufy locks have had traditional keys. Some of them have been hidden. Some of them have been kind of the more secure style locks. This is a traditional style key, so you can hide that key somewhere in your yard or in a lockbox outside. So if the batteries die, something goes wrong, you forget your combo, or something like that, you can still get in. Now, I don't think in the pros section I have to talk too much about home automation because I've already nerded out about that a lot in the video. But let's talk about the cons. And I can't honestly say there were major cons of this lock, but what I do want to bring up is the AA batteries. And this is one of those things where it's really up to you whether you think if this is a pro or a con. Every other Eufy lock I've used has had their rechargeable lithium battery. Let's see if I've got one in here. I do. Let me grab one. And I'm back. All their locks, and actually their smart drop, uses this lithium battery. It charges via USB on the back, and you pop it in there, and you're off to the races. Now, when I first got this lock, I hadn't really read everything closely, and when I opened it up and I saw that it ran on AA batteries, I was a little bummed. Because I was so used to having the rechargeable batteries. But then, I thought about it a little bit more. And before I had the Eufy locks, I've had other locks, and I've had locks that ran on AA's. The nice thing about AA's is when your batteries die, you just shove new ones in. With these, it takes hours to recharge them, which means you pull it out, now your lock doesn't work. I mean, it does work as a key lock, but it doesn't work. And I did wind up accidentally locking myself out of the house one time doing that because I forgot to hide the key. Now, this thing does use 8 AA batteries, which is a lot of AA batteries, and you could use rechargeable ones if you wanted to and just swap them in and out. I've got piles of rechargeable batteries around my house, so I think after I blow through the set that are in the lock now, I'm going to switch to rechargeable ones, but it's kind of growing on me, the idea that I just got to pull them out and replace them. Now, the downside is if it dies completely, you need 8 batteries. But my experience with all of the other Eufy locks and products has been that it doesn't die immediately. It starts warning you days and days in advance. Like, I've had these things, they start warning me, and I've had 2-3 weeks worth of battery life left in them before they finally died. So it should give you enough time to run down to the store, put it on your next shopping list, order them on Amazon or whatever. But whether the AA battery thing is an issue for you, that's kind of your call. The other thing that kind of bummed me out about this one is this did not give me the option to set it up with my hub. A lot of the other locks have given me the option of setting it up on Wi-Fi, using their little Wi-Fi nodule thing you plug into the wall, or the hub, and I have a Homebase 3. I like having a Homebase 3, and I like having everything connected to one thing. I don't really honestly know if it matters, but I was a little bummed that it didn't give me the option to connect it to the Homebase 3 where I have all my other stuff connected. But in the end, I am excited that Eufy is now dabbling in Matter, and I'm hoping that this is a direction they are planning on going. I recently put up their new cameras, and their new cameras are HomeKit compatible, but they weren't Matter compatible. But I don't think Matter's doing cameras yet. Maybe they will at some point. But this does mean now that I can get everything talking to each other, and I'm hoping that maybe they will run an update or something for the alarm system that I have on the house, because that's a Eufy alarm, and then I can run everything through Matter in one thing. I can use all those things as triggers. Would be nice. So Eufy, again, if you're listening, please, I'd really like it. Now, if you have any questions about this lock, run into trouble in the installation process, or have questions about Matter and home automation, leave me a comment down below. I'm always responding to comments in my comment section. I will also leave a link for this thing in the pinned comment and also in the description if you want to check this thing out for yourself. If you got something out of this video, hit that subscribe button, thumbs up, all that good YouTuber stuff, and of course, thank you so much for watching.